Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, many waterfront communities in Lagos have lived through rounds of eviction only to see their land sold off to the highest bidder. Momentum is growing, though, in a pushback against what they say is illegal harassment. We hear from our correspondent in the city. Also, civilians continue to pay the highest price in Sudan's deepening conflict. Both the army and the RSF paramilitary are accused of atrocities. Many displaced survivors fearing that their abusers could escape accountability. And style and substance as menswear is the focus for Paris Fashion Week. I speak to Ghanaian lifestyle and creative pioneer Nuel Bans about how, through his creation of a flagship fashion magazine and production studio, he still keeps up-and-coming talent from the continent as his template. But first, land is scarce in Lagos. And over the years, Nigerian authorities have been evicting people from poorer waterfront settlements. The government said that it's in order to improve facilities on the land, but more often than not, it's reclaimed and then sold on to the rich. Many have lived through rounds of evictions, but are now pushing back against what they say is illegal harassment. Our Sam Olokoya tells us more.
The waterfront communities in Lagos have again returned to court in their struggle to stop the government from forcefully evicting them from their land. In protest at the court premises and at the residence of the Lagos State Governor, the waterfront communities called on the Lagos State government to comply with a High Court order which restricted it from forcefully evicting them without proper notice and resettlement arrangements. 9 years after the court ordered the government to comply with these safeguards, the forceful eviction of waterfront communities still continues in Lagos. One of the latest incidents took place in Makoko, one of the largest floating communities in the world. Megan Chapman, who works with the waterfront communities, says many residents have been living outdoors after being evicted from their homes.
These people have nowhere else to go. We have people who are sleeping inside of canoe now. We have people who are sleeping under the bridge, exposed to all forms of potential violence and harm. I know young girls who have been sexually assaulted under the bridge because they have been left outside. They were in a house before and the government came and demolished their house. So they need justice. They need the government to stand up and do the right thing. They need the courts to say that the rule of law matters in Nigeria and that people can't just be thrown out of their house in violation of court orders, in violation of the Constitution. They need some sanity to be restored and they need the protection of their government, not for harm to be done to them by the government.
There are several waterfront communities in the coastal parts of Lagos. The communities are mainly occupied by the poor. With growing pressure for land, the government is forcefully evicting waterfront communities and converting their land to high-end residential estates, which only the very rich can afford.
Sam Olokoya there for us. Now, a day after being found in contempt, Kenya's health ministers apologised to the High Court and ordered the suspension of the construction of an Ebola quarantine centre for Americans. Now, last month, judges had ordered that building stop pending the decision of a petition brought against the project by the Law Society of Kenya and the constitutional watchdog, the Katiba Institute. They argue that Kenya, which so far has no reported Ebola cases, does not have the capacity in its health system to also manage foreign patients potentially infected with a virus that sparked a crisis in DR Congo. Now, that halt did not happen, but the court has now accepted Douale's apology and does not appear to be planning to take any further action against the minister.
I have directed the immediate and complete cessation of any intended construction, site preparations, or related activities concerning Laikipia Air Base facility, pending the hearing and determination of the substantive petition or until further orders of this court.
Well, staying in Kenya, prosecutors are preparing murder charges against students accused of starting a fatal dorm fire at a school last month. 16 girls were killed when the blaze tore through the Utumishi Girls' School in central Kenya on May 28th, forcing terrified students to try to run for their lives through a single doorway. 9 suspects were arrested, who police say started the fire by setting a mattress ablaze near an exit. and Niger has formally requested to pull out of the International Criminal Court, meaning that withdrawal takes effect next June. Now, along with allies Mali and Burkina Faso, Niamey flagged its intention to part ways with the ICC last year. The group are all former French colonies now run by their militaries and had slammed the Hague-based court as being an instrument of neo-colonial repression. The three nations also quit regional bloc ECOWAS and created their own group called the Confederation of Sahel States. They've moved away from partnerships with the West as they've strengthened ties with Russia. And civilians continue to pay the highest price in Sudan's deepening conflict. On Tuesday, UN officials warned that the city of El Obeid in southern Kordofan is only weeks away from a humanitarian disaster if aid is not allowed in soon. It's currently besieged by the RSF paramilitary that's been battling the army since 2023. Now, the brutality of the fighting seen both sides accused of atrocities. And as the Sudanese military touts RSF defections as an indicator that it currently has the upper hand, many displaced survivors of the crisis fear that their abusers could escape accountability. Clarice Fortuny with more.
In the Darfur town of Tawila, thousands of displaced people continue to shelter in makeshift camps after fleeing fighting and attacks across the region. Among them is Halima Ismail. She was forced to flee repeatedly as RSF units swept through villages around Al-Fasher.
There were 8 or 10 vehicles. 2 of them went to the market, and the rest moved towards the reservoir. Savannah himself was the leader. They went towards the reservoir. We don't know what they did there.
Savannah, also known as Ali Rizkala, was one of the most prominent RSF commanders in Darfur. He defected last month. He insists that anyone responsible for crimes should still face the law.
If I am accused personally, I myself, as Savannah, will present myself to justice with courage, dignity and self-respect. I am willing to die on the front lines, let alone die by the justice system.
For victims and relatives of those killed, however, the wounds remain raw. This man says his son was killed by RSF fighters, and that any state decision to reconcile with former fighters does not erase his personal right to seek justice.
I will neither forgive nor pardon at all.
The army hopes defections will deepen divisions inside the RSF and strengthen its military position. But rights advocates warn that without a broader process of transitional justice, the grievances of victims could remain unresolved long after the fighting ends.
Well, menswear Paris Fashion Week is underway. But when it comes to African fashion, Nuel Bans is a tastemaker who also has a voracious appetite for talent and trends. Now, he set up the Debonair Afrique magazine in 2012, which has become a touchstone for all things of African culture and lifestyle. A blink later, that became a digital content and artistic creative platform called Debonair Afrique Studios. But through it all, he has been seeing who he can help as he goes, trying to make it easier for young creators from the continent to turn their passion into viable businesses. And that is not an easy task. So he's in town having set up the Style Lounge warehouse for Menswear Fashion Week here in Paris, showcasing some of the amazing African designers and craftspeople that he works with. And I managed to drag him away from all that fancy for a quick chat. Noel, thank you so much for making time to come on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
You saw me get waxing lyrical there, but I meant every word.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
So, you know, despite all of the glamour and the excitement and the creativity and the work that you do, one of the things that really struck me when we chatted earlier was how you really focus on trying to create some kind of structure to the creative ecosystem for Africa. Why do you think, what do you think is missing on that front, and why isn't it already there?
One thing I always say that in order to make an impact in an industry or in a society, you need to educate, structure, and then you invest. And as part of that, that's what we've been doing over the years in terms of supporting young and emerging designers with the education And then with the structure now, which the structure phase is always one of the most important things. However, some of the things that are needed in terms of supporting young and emerging designers, it's not just one-man job to do on the continent, because then we have about more than 50 countries in Africa, and then you have to look at these other ecosystems you are building from platform to platforms that you want to create. But one of the most powerful tools that has ever helped us is our digital platform, which is the Debonnaire Afrique magazine, that has helped us to touch base with other different countries in Africa and different ecosystems in Africa. Lagos Fashion Week, La Fashion Week, South Africa Fashion Week, SMS Week. These are platforms that are pioneering and supporting young and emerging designers. But then after the showcase, what's next? What makes the money? What brings in the structural phase in terms of supporting the designers to upscale their businesses? That is investment. Unfortunately, we don't have that capacity to help designers have that investment on the continent. And so we found a way to find an opportunity. What is next? Which is the B2C, that's the business to customer or the business to consumer structure, where we decided to create a structural pop-up, but more of a concept space where you come in and it feels like you're about to discover new brands, and then also be part of the culture. And look, the 5 days that this happened, we did different activities to bring people together to have an experience. We did a food experience, we did fashion, we did lifestyle, we did talks on sustainability, ethical fashion waste, because some of these things are some of the rising matters in the ecosystem in Ghana and in Africa as a whole. So for us, it's a big deal for us to be able to also work with different platforms to achieve this, and with different designers on other countries in Africa to achieve this goal as well.
So as I mentioned, you started all of this at least the public-facing side of it in 2012, then you set up the platform in 2016, I believe it was. Now you're here in Paris, a decade on. As you've done this slow build over a decade, what have you tangibly been most proud of being able to deliver for, up-and-coming creators?
Right. For me, I think whenever a door opens for me, it's not for me to shut the door, but to open it to others. Over the years, I've been great to grace going to rooms where other young designers cannot be. And this is my first time. Just a voice note landed me over for an interview with someone from LVMH that got a designer into the room, because Amazing. I was pushing to have African designers based in Africa, producing in Africa, to be part of the LVMH prize. And one of the questions they asked me, why are African designers not applying for LVMH? And I said, we don't have the same system and structure of education as the global fashion education. So you are marking us on different, the same marking scheme. Obviously, African fashion designers are going to be out of the scheme. Where we have our structure, we are building with nothing. All we have is our craftsmanship. All we have with the resources available to us, where someone in the European space or in the global space has so many tools and equipment, so many structures, so many funding, and we don't have that. So that was what led some of these designers selected for LVMH. And for me, it's a big deal to have designers represent us in a different way. And I'm always grateful to have some opportunities to get into rooms, to get this done, to give the young designers the opportunity as well.
Well, the whole African ecosystem, I'm sure, is very, very lucky to have you amongst those advocating. No, of course, just some of the insights of some of what you've achieved has clearly delivered results. And thanks so much for making the time to come and speak to me. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for Eye on Africa. One last thing, though. Moments away. I was going to ask you.
Right.
Okay. Right. Ghana, England, World Cup. They're about to start playing. Is there any question as to who you'll be supporting? Will you be? I'm so sorry. I feel guilty that I'm taking you away from the match. Wow. Who will you be supporting?
Wow. I'm the Black Star.
I was going to say.
I will support my Black Star.
Too long of a pause.
They just break my heart sometimes, but I will give it to the new team. They are doing incredibly well, I must say. And the spirit is high. Ghanaians, our spirits are high for this new team. So we are hoping for the best. I'll continue to be a Black Star supporter, and I wish England the best as well.
That's very, very diplomatic of you. Very gracious. Thank you so much, Noel, for coming on to speak to Eye on Africa. Thank you all for joining us. That's it for the show for now. Do so again if you can. Take care.